Welcome to Rolled Worlds, and I'm Sean Roberts, the writer.
For the first time in the 5 years of my life, I feel a drop of lingering hope for my people. As I feel the salty ocean breeze blow gently against the bristling of my whiskers, I see it before me, Gartilia. The city had been in view for the last 30 minutes, but it only now comes to life with the commotion of humanoids, sprawling the streets like a hive of busy bees. How my disdain grows for this city each time I come back from my tranquil voyages home. The humanoids that I know here think of me as a merchant of Gartilia. How little they know as I slip their own beautiful art out of their ignorant lands. Feronian jewelry, something worth the risk. How their craft has amazed all and fashioned such jealous fiends in the world. Trivial to know I am one of those scoundrels. I remember when I first saw their art 3 years ago. I was just coming into maturity and living midst the alleyways of the city I feigned to call home. At that time, my people, the Xilican, were not even formed. We were simply more of the awoken, simple animals and plants of the world touched by magic and blessed with sentience. Blessed to distinguish how well we did not have it. Blessed to recognize our desired extermination from the feet of those we walk amongst, now as still lesser beings. I was at the plaza, begging for my colony's next meal. We had just recently become awoken, and we, as mice, were unaware of how useful we could be to humanoids, and how we could turn a profit from it. I was sent out with my sister, Yil, to go supplicate ourselves before the masses today. She was so much smaller than me, a whole inch. She was by far the more endearing and affectionate one in the family. Her gray and slick fur, with a tuft of white on the top of her head, and her sunlit green eyes were always able to draw pity and a shard piece or two from a passerby. She always had a look of request on her face, which abetted her task, I am sure. I, on the other hand, the humble Finn, with my scruffy orange fur, elongated ears, and awkwardly pointed whiskers. My bare brown eyes spoke nothing but displeasure, and others could perceive that. As we stood there in the sopping rain, asking each person for a shard, or even just a piece of food, we would have to keep tugging and holding our ragged clothes together. When I say clothes, I mean that in the most basic sense, as in we wore them. They were simply the stitching of rags sewn together to wrap around ourselves. We were also blessed with the desire for physical decency. This blessing seemed to hold more of a curse in it than any good. For at least before we did not know, and we could crawl and screech in our ignorance. A kind child gave us a piece of her bread, so we wrapped it in other rags we brought to carry food and money home with. Very rarely did we acquire rations that were as fresh as this. My sister and I sat and savored a piece each. The bread was soft in our hand, another rarity. Most bread came to us stale and hard. The most wonderful aspect of this bread was that it was warm. The child's parent must be a baker, or this bread just came out of the oven before the child purchased it. I rested the bread against my cheek for a moment and closed my eyes. taking in its heat against my wet and cold fur. When I opened my eyes, Yil stood before me, regarding me softly, beaming at me, letting me know we were fed and safe another day with just her own inner warmth. My sister also possessed a gentleness that I cherished, for we knew very little of it in our new world since being awoken. I ruffled her white tuff, and she snickered and pulled away with a snitch sound of irritation and laughter. I looked around as she finished pinning the wrap around the bread. And there they were. A flash of blue reflection hit my eyes. My eyes were blinded for an instant, and my mind felt confusion, for it was such a cloudy day and full of rain. Why would there be the reflection of light around the plaza? As my eyes refocused, I saw a gleaming aura of blue light coming from one of the carts. I gestured to my sister that I was going to go look around the merchant's carts, and meandered over. I tried to appear uninterested in anything around me, for I did not want to appear as though I was begging or trying to pinch anything. The members of the marketplace did not appreciate or tolerate begging inside the plaza itself, which is why we had to keep our begging to the outskirts of the carts, so as to remain on the public streets. As I subtly crept closer to the cart, I saw the Feronian merchant turn his back to me. I jumped against the wooden wheel of his cart, scratching and scrambling as quickly as I could up to the heights of his tabletop. As the merchant haggled with a customer, I looked down and saw the most striking thing I had ever perceived. A blue jewel of some kind sat before me under a glass screen. It was completely smooth and spherical. A hole had been drilled through the gem, and the ends of the hole were rounded out softly so as to continue its excellence of smoothness and grace. It shone with a reflective luster that puzzled the mind. I scratched my head at it and leaned from side to side. The reflection stayed, and the stone glowed no matter what angle I regarded it from. The dark blue crystal must have been about the size of my head. Sharply through the hole of the sphere went two separate silver claws, which touched at the center of the sphere, but did not connect. The claws were coupled at a locking point above the sphere, almost looking as that of two metallic crab claws intertwining above a gem they both yearned for. Through the connection point of the claws ran a silver chain made of many strands of metal entwined together in a spiral. As it glorified itself before me, I heard the merchant speak of it to the customer.
"What do you think it is, you dope? It is Feronian craft, no doubt, the greatest fashion jewelry in the world. The Merwen themselves crave it back, but we won't let them have it, won't we, my dear boy?"
The other man snickered to himself coldly and replied,
"Well, of course not. No need to send these beauties back down to the depths where they came from. Too great to miss the light of day to us. But who made it? I want to know the smith. I wish to know the artist of this piece if I am going to spend my family's fortune on it."
The merchant scoffed and pointed his lumpy finger into the other man's face.
"Who cares who made it, sonny boy? The thing that matters is that it's here, correct? I should be asking you the questions to make sure you aren't a dang nabbin stealing Merwen."
I pressed my left hand against the glass to prepare to dart away.
When humans start pointing their plump fingers into each other's faces and begin making accusations at one another, a fight is not far behind. I heard a quiet squeak from below and recognized my sister's voice. I slowly backed away towards the edge of the cart and looked down to see my sister looking up at me with the bread wrapped up by her side. She looked amusing dragging the bread piece around when it was at least twice her size. She squeaked again to signal me to get down and for us to go home. I gestured to her to wait one moment while I pondered. Something like this necklace seemed to all of a sudden have a great importance to me. As a matter of fact, as I looked about the merchants from this vantage point, food was pushed by the lowest of the people here. Finer things of lesser true value seemed to hold a stronger place in society. I believe I understood at that moment what I had to attain in order to make a place of refuge for my colony and family. I looked back down at the necklace and knew I had to take it. Determination filled my eyes and my heartbeat began to race with the anxiety of being caught in this act. The two men started to shove each other around in their blissful stupidity of superiority over the other. I slid the glass to the side with relative ease and touched the gem. The crystal smoothness gave a prickle down the back of my neck and made my fur rise in the geometrically perfect shape that my mind and body could somehow perceive. As I lifted the necklace up, I felt a great shift in the cart. The larger merchant was collapsing backwards into his cart from being punched in the face by the customer. He must have finally insulted the client enough for him to warrant that. I tried to scurry away, but it was too late. My feet scampered relentlessly against the glass, but to no avail. The cart toppled backwards and crashed onto its side. Jewelry and clothing flied delicately across the street. As I landed on the ground with a hard slap, I felt the wind get knocked out of me. The rain falling seemed to swirl toward me rather than come straight down, due to the lack of air and the dizzying fall. A drop of rain hit me on the nose and face, which shuddered me back to my senses. I heaved breath back into my lungs and hoisted myself up. Looking in either direction, I saw guards and townsfolk gathering around to see what had happened. I saw a blue gleam under the cart. I ran past the unconscious merchant and darted under the toppled tabletop. In the shade of the cart's side, the necklace still shone with beauty. I picked it up and started to think frantically as to how to escape with this while everyone gathered around. I ducked down lower under the cart to gaze around the feet of the humanoids, when I heard a soft and weakening whine. I looked behind me. Under the weight of the cart was Yil. She was trapped between the rock slab ground and the cart's handle. Her chest was crushed in, and the look of request in her eyes was nothing less than a plea for relief. She knew she could not be freed, or helped even if she was unpinned. She simply reached out her hand and asked for mine. I took her hand, came down to her and stroked my hand over the white tuft on her head. I pressed my cheek against hers. I could feel her tears warm my cold, wet fur. This warmth was stronger than the bread's, and I still feel that warmth this day. I felt her hands loosen in my grip and could hear her slow exhale of breath as her spirit left this shell. I felt something depart from me as well. Fullness retreated from my heart, and emptiness took its place. Something else came. I wished to make these people suffer for what they had done. Their ignorance and violence caused this. Their carelessness of smaller individuals such as my sister caused her death. They care not for the goings-on of the smaller folk. So I will not care for them. I will take from them what they treasure. I will take their gems, their finery, their silks, anything they hold dear. I will take it until all that is left is simple, plain, and boring. My wealth will shine against them, and they will take notice of my people. Then they will plead to even see the gloss of a gem, to touch the softness of silks. I pulled her out from under the side of the handle that pinned her. I snatched up the necklace with my other hand and looked about for a way out. A small street drain was a step behind the cart, where a guard's feet stood over, 1 foot on either side of the drain. With the distraction of their own violence, I dashed through his feet and jumped through the grate of the drain, with my sister over my shoulder and the necklace in hand. We landed in a pipe leading down into the sewer below the streets. I looked up the drain at the guard who moved out from over the grate, and the sun came down into the pipe. The sky must have cleared when the cart crashed over. I felt its heat, but not its warmth. That had left me. Coldness is what remains for this world in my heart. As I made my way down the drain with determination and a harsh vendetta, I knew my colony would eat tonight because of this necklace, and it would feed us for the rest of our lives. I had this knowledge because many would want this precious piece of art. I was ready to take from them what I knew they wished to take from me. The wind finally ceased, and my boat came into dock at the port of Gartilia. At the landing by the main docks was a port specifically made for the Xilican ships we designed ourselves. Feronians unloaded our exotic fruits to sell in their streets. I kept recollecting how my sister was the cause of our financial success. I reached down to a tiny vial around my neck that held ash within it from my sister's remains. I clutched it with closed eyes and felt warm again for a moment. Thank you, Yil. I am sorry. I opened my eyes and walked off the docks and into my storefront named Yil's Treasures. For the first time in the 5 years of my life, I feel a drop of lingering hope for my people, the Xilican.
Please subscribe, like, and comment down below in order to help with, the algorithm and stuff. And comment down below any specific countries, races, gods, or anything that you would like me to do a video on next. Thanks.